we go.
All right, thanks.
Let's call to order the Conservation Commission Inland Wetland Agency meeting Tuesday, January 26, 2021, 6 p.m. Call the roll, please.
John Mailing,
Here.
Steve Clockey,
Here.
Matt Pence,
Here.
John Levin,
Present.
and Cheryl Brown.
Cheryl Brown.
Here.
I was making sure that Ed Olomenko is not present. Okay, so you have a quorum.
Okay, we'll move on to item 3, receipt and discussion. We have nothing for receipt and discussion, apparently.
That is correct.
So we'll move to item 4, discussion and or decision. S-2553, 12 Holiday Drive, Lawton. Corrective action, restoration of a wetland, watercourse, and upland review area. And we have a memorandum from staff on this property. Alexis, you want to just tee it up a little bit?
Sure. I'm just, don't think the applicant is here. I think that they were planning to attend.
I see 3 attendees.
But I will talk, yeah, I'm pretty sure none of them are him. Pretty sure none of those are his numbers that he has at least called the office on before. So let me do an overview and share. And then Jeff, if you could please enable my screen sharing when you get a chance.
Should know.
Okay, thanks. The last revision was submitted by the applicant in December, and it's dated December 1st, 2020. I'll just review it real quick. So again, the bottom of the screen is Holiday Drive. It's just cut off at the bottom of the screen, but you get the idea that the house is at the bottom of the screen. In the rear is an extensive rear yard, and that's the green hashed area. Portion of that yard is within the flagged wetland, but it has been maintained as yard for her lawn for many years. And then there is an intermittent watercourse, which is this dashed dot line that serves as really the boundary between the lawn wetland and what had been a wooded wetland. It was a thinly wooded wetland, but it was a wooded wetland. And if you recall, this is a corrective action application. The property owner received a notice of violation after doing some clearing of the ground vegetation after a large central tree had fallen by natural causes. He eventually cleared that up, and when he did, initiated some additional landscaping activities, mostly the installation of a wood chip path and wood chips kind of throughout the area. What he is proposing in this latest revision of his mitigation plan is a few things, and hopefully you all remember that originally there was a fire pit type thing that was just within the wetland about where my cursor is, and there is a second path that goes to it. What he's proposing is to remove the path that goes cuts across the wetland in the general vicinity of where my cursor is. He is proposing to retain the walking paths that are in the upland review area. Within the wetland itself, he is proposing to rake out and remove all of the wood chips that were deposited. And then additionally, within the buffer area, listening to some of your comments, he is removing, for the most part, the wood chips other than the the narrow walking path that he's installed, except in this location of this aerial slack line, this recreational thing that he has for his kids. He has another aerial zip line that goes from what's marked start to end, but he has devised a way so that they can zip across and then come across the lawn and back over. I think that's the highlight. He has some notes regarding the activities, a little bit more details. One thing on this plan that he had added was the installation of a shed in the rearmost portion of the property. It's not zoning compliant, and I strongly encouraged him to drop any request to add a shed to the rear buffer. And so for now,
did he?
decided that he does not need a shed and will not be proposing a shed anywhere on the property. So that's my synopsis.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this? We've been over it quite a bit over the last several weeks. Any questions at all? Any comments?
Did they get flooding back there?
Did they get flooding? It has been quite wet. Two winters ago, it was very wet. Some of the other neighbors would say it was because of a violation that another neighbor initiated and removed some trees. We have kind of have there's three in a row of a lot of activity. The entire area was inundated two winters ago, in part because of the violation that happened at number 8 Holiday. But yes, I'd say that it's a fairly wet wetland. It is, let me just go back to sharing the screen. When Holiday Drive was developed, and it was developed prior to the wetland regulations, the developer at the time tried somewhat successfully to drain the wetland by installing a drainage pipe. There's actually a large, it's now a city easement and drain pipe that kind of cuts through the wetland. And on the adjacent property, there is a large catch basin yard drain that collects some of the water, including this intermittent water course that then goes into a pipe that then continues its travels. So historically, I have no doubt that it was even wetter. And I think that previous soil scientists that have looked at other properties that are adjacent agreed that historically this was a very wet wetland. It is now a moderately wet wetland that definitely does see areas of inundation during the early spring, kind of before things have leafed out. But, that answer your, okay.
Yeah, it does. Do you think his efforts to restore the wetlands are adequate in kind of avoiding any future flooding?
Lean in, we can't quite hear you.
Do you think his efforts in restoring the wetland have been sufficient enough to kind of prevent any future flooding as a result of the violation?
So one of the functions of the wetland is definitely to capture and store storm runoff, and during flood events. Certainly the topping off the entire wetland with wood chips and removing ground vegetation is counter to that function. The removal of the wood chips and seeding with a wetland seed mix would definitely help get closer to a restoration. Is it the best wetland restoration plan I've ever seen? Absolutely not. The plan was devised by the homeowner, and this is not his expertise. it's not the best, it's not the worst. If
But it's down there.
What's that?
It's down there.
It's down
It
there,
may
right?
not be the worst, but it's down there.
Right.
Um,
It's what he's proposing, and if implemented the way that he describes, yeah, it could be a nice wetland. It is kind of at the top of the wetland, sort of. It's hard to. I don't have a map of the surrounding area, but it is kind of at this point a pretty small wetland area. So just because of its size, he's not going to have outsized impact. So I don't know.
I appreciate your efforts to try to put a good face on this, Alexis. I believe this. I believe this is a situation where somebody has moved a recreation area into a wetlands and has tweaked and poked and whatever, and it's better than it was when it first arrived, but it's still a recreation area planted on top of a wetland. Now, it's a corrective action. I mean, I think the option of simply saying that it has to be abandoned is not on our list of possibilities. But in your memorandum dated January 21st, in the subsection 3, I would feel a little bit better about granting this if there was a more explicit definition that the wetlands area should not be in any way used for anything related to recreational purposes. What we are talking about is that what it has to be maintained as lawn, landscape, garden, or manicured feature. It says that it cannot be used for that, but I would love it if we could add recreational feature maybe, or some other language that's reasonable. And if that could be added, I would say it's not the worst, and
Right. I guess I would maybe add the word active recreation. I mean, recreation is one.
Active is fine. Active
okay.
recreation is fine. Yeah. Okay. So, any further discussion on this? Is there a motion? All right. I will move that permit number 520-553 12 Holiday Drive, Lawton, be granted according to the stipulations and qualifications outlined in staff memorandum dated January 21st, 2021. Don't all jump in at once. Do I hear a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no.
No.
No, maybe I'll do a roll call.
Yeah, probably better, because I think we're 2-1 at this point.
And could you maybe just clarify, was your motion to adopt the resolution as it written in the memorandum, or with
yes.
the modification that you described previously?
Well, with the modification that we just discussed, active recreation.
I just wanted to clarify. Okay, so I'll do a call for the vote. So John Mailing,
Aye.
Steve Clockey,
Nay.
Matt Pence,
Nay.
John Levin,
Abstain.
and Cheryl Brown.
Aye.
Well, there we go. 2 ayes, 2 nays, and an abstention. Have I got that right?
Yeah. Well,
What is the what is the next step? Let's say, for example, if we can't get a consensus, or did we, did it just,
So,
do we have enough?
okay, you don't
yays
need
or
a
nays?
consensus, you just need a,
Jordan.
yeah, a majority of those present. So the, you abstained. So I think that would be that the motion fails.
Okay, then what?
So you can try again with a different motion. Or you
Is it
can-
sorry,
or you can do other, so when you approve, you can approve with certain terms or limitations or conditions. So you can change any of those terms, limitations, or conditions so far as all of those relate to how it protects or impacts the wetland and watercourse. So just keep that in mind. Or you can make a motion completely counter to the first motion.
Well, are you basically, you're saying that if the motion is not approved, then it is rejected, denied? Is it can either be one, it can't, it has to
Yes,
be one or the other.
right.
Okay, and if it's denied, then we report back to the applicant that the motion was denied.
Mr. Levin has his hand raised.
Oh, I recognize Commissioner Levin.
Thank you. So I've abstained because I'm new here. I have not, I'm just now seeing these types of violations. So I don't have the same experience level that the other commissioners do. And, I think that's a disadvantage for me to make an informed decision. And, I see this. Yeah, frankly, I don't know how to vote. I don't know what is the right answer. I see two, wise, smart, informed commissioners voting in favor and two equally wise, smart, informed commissioners voting against. And I don't know what the right answer is. And it's sad to admit my ignorance. I'm wondering, is it useful to discuss the application further, just so that I can have a better understanding as to which way it should go, in my opinion?
Well, that's an
Alexis,
interesting.
is it still open for discussion?
Well, I
Yes, it
think,
can be. Yes,
Do we need a motion for that, or we can just keep talking about it?
you can keep discussing.
I would say this, I think a vote is a vote. And if it's rejected, it's rejected. And it doesn't make sense to keep going back until you get, 3 and 2 positive. But I think that given Commissioner Levin's request for more information, without him committing that after having got that information, he's going to do anything, vote positive, negative, or abstain again, which is his right and will be his right. That on that basis, if the commission agrees, we could revisit the application. I don't know that there would be any difference in outcome if that happened, but unless there is some procedural reason why we can't do that, then I would say let's do it. And the next question would be when. I'm not sure we have the information. Yeah, Steve.
Maybe the burden lies on the two of us who are keeping this from moving forward. So maybe I can just explain a little bit why I voted nay. And it's mostly a matter of intent and fairness. So I think it's really important to hold everyone to the same standards or as close as we can get to them within reason. We're not determining the future of the entire universe here. It's just one property at the top end of a wetland that's been historically compromised. And, the world's not gonna stop spinning regardless of what we decide here. So, but, this is all public and recorded, and I just wanted to make sure it was clear that I wanted to make it a point of treating everyone equally. So we have held other property owners in a very similar situation and in a very similar location to a much higher standard. And I just didn't feel right voting yay by not upholding that same standard in this property. So in order for me to get a yay, what I would probably, or in order for me to give a yay, would be to propose edits to the memorandum such that first of all, the shed is struck from the plan. Secondly, the bridge and the path across the intermittent water course is struck from the plan. All wood chips removed from wetland area, and the slack line be relocated in a way that is not drawing traffic into the middle of the area that we're trying to not trot on repeatedly. So those are kind of like the three things that I would include if I were to have my own motion for approving something that would move this forward.
Can I just clarify, Alexis?
Yes.
My understanding from what you said and from the memorandum is that technically, according to the rules and regulations, if this corrective action is taken in the according to the direction that has been outlined, this property would be in compliance. Is that correct?
So if you're asking if a motion to approve passes?
No, I'm asking whether the resolution outlined in the January 21st memorandum
Right.
and the qualifications that are a part of it, numbered here 1 through 6. If they were all accomplished according to these stipulations, then the property would be in compliance with the wetlands rules and regs as we have them. Is that true or false?
So the violation letter had certain directives, and so the property owner is directed to file for an application to show restoration work, and to get such, which he did, and to get such application approved. So to show that it is satisfactorily meets the requirements of the Inland Wetland Agency as far as its consideration of whether the proposed activities sufficiently mitigate the activities that initiated the violation. And then 3, the third directive is to fully implement any such conditions and activities outlined in a successful corrective action permit. So in order for the property to be back in compliance, all those 3 things need to happen.
And those 3 things are outlined in your memorandum.
So in my memorandum is a draft resolution to approve with certain conditions. And if that resolution were approved, then right, he would be ticking off 2 out of the 3 steps towards resolving his violation.
And could we amend the resolution by including some of the specific items that Steve brought up? Specifically.
So yes, so if the motion, if the corrective action application is not approved, then what happens is that second directive of the violation has not been met. And so then I would send the property owner a new enforcement order informing him that he's failed to meet the directives of the corrective action, or the the violation that was sent back in October, and basically would have the same directions and have him start again. If you want to kind of continue to consider it, I guess I would propose or suggest that you that one of you ask for a vote to reconsider the vote. And I think you would need a, majority of you to kind of re-vote. And then you can discuss, and any one of you could make a new motion with some new items.
Well, let me ask another question, since I've not yet hit my limit. We could let the vote stand as it is, could we not? And then when we reconvene next, look at a different resolution that's far more specific to the requirements regarding recreation. I know that would make me feel better. I don't know about Steve, but it sounds like a lot of the things that concerned him had to do with, us basically acknowledging that this wetlands is going to be sidestepped and slid over and, basically incorporated into an outdoor use platform. Anyway, I wonder whether we might do that.
I think Steve is trying to talk as well.
Oh,
No, that's okay. Well, can I ask a question? I think rejecting it is a statement in itself and may point us toward getting a proposal that is more attractive or more whatever. But I don't want to have the homeowner incur, like would they incur like extra fees for having to apply again? Because I don't think that would be fair. I'd feel bad about that. So.
Okay.
good question.
Well, so yes, if
Let's
an
complicate
application,
this a little bit more is what I really want to do.
yeah. I mean, so you have control over that. So you have, if the current application was denied, I would send a letter saying, okay, reapply, and then it would have an application fee. Then that applicant could, just like other applicants before him,
Apply for-
request a waiver or reduction of that fee.
So it's not something that I would want to include. So for example, I'm going to move that, I always say, I'm not going to move anything. I'm going to just say to everyone that we should let the vote stand as it is, or we can revote if you want. But, and I am just putting it out there that I'd be willing to, if he asks to have the reapplication fee waived, I would definitely be for that.
I concur.
I concur as well.
I do as well.
Yep.
Okay.
And just to
I was
state my
unprepared
position,
for a
Sorry.
tie vote, but I think you're good.
if you guys want to know
Not
my
gonna tie
position
you
on,
in years.
sorry, my position on the vote is I felt that more could be done to restore the violation and restore the wetlands as to how they were. So,
I can't hear him.
sorry.
I can't hear you, Matt.
Yeah, I'm gonna put some
Sorry.
headphones in a second.
You need worse posture. You got to slouch more.
So I voted against it. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
I just think more can be done to restore the wetlands to where they were. So if the applicant can do that and kind of prove and justify, the restoration efforts, they've done a lot and I appreciate it. I just think a little bit more can be done. So that's why I didn't do it.
Is everybody audible?
So
Okay.
that's-
Yep.
Do we need to, there's no motions, we just move forward with our agenda, right?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, this basically, I'm still not absolutely certain I understand how it works with two ayes, 2 nays, and an abstention. But if we do not have a majority voting for it, then it's not approved, is my understanding, and that seems to me to be reasonable and fair. But it might be helpful to staff if we were very specific about the things that we would like to see added to a resolution.
Well, I
Not
think
wanting-
Absolutely.
the
not wanting to
responsibility
speak.
lies with the applicant to, there's only so much I think that Lexus can address in the directive. I think it's something that the homeowner has to present, it's actually like kind of visual stuff too, rather than just language in a memo. Or am I wrong, Alexis?
Right. No, I think that, so you had articulated earlier that you felt that the mitigation activities proposed thus far were insufficient to restoring the wetland functions that had been there previously. And so, and you mentioned some possibilities, some possible actions that might sway you to vote in favor of a restoration plan, and that include removing the wood chip paths that are in the wetland and within the buffer, removing the slack line, and other active recreational uses within the wetland and buffer. So that can certainly be relayed to the homeowner.
I mean, I could see, I'm imagining, I'm hypothesizing, but I could imagine Mr. Laughlin at some point in the next week or two saying, what do I need to do? Okay, specifically. And I think that, one of the things that bothers me about this application is that it's, back of the envelope, it's sketches. And I think that we probably need to be far more definitive about saying that to the extent that these sketches would show a moved zip line and a moved fire pit, that we should be very specific about saying that those items need to be specified in any sort of resolution so that staff has got something to fall back on if this just falls, this becomes,
We drag it out for another 3 months?
well, I mean, I don't think it would. The sketch did outline, for example, the moving of the zip line, which you had suggested, and which we all agree is a good thing. Maybe if he asks what he needs to do next, he could, be a little bit more formal about those specific changes that he's put on his December 1st sketch.
Okay.
All right, that's good. Having heard it okay, we will move on the agenda. To item S2558, 125 Richards Avenue. Construction of 5 duplex buildings for senior housing with associated parking, etc. We also, is everybody pretty much up to date on that? We looked at that and we have a staff memorandum on that.
Right. So Mr. Pence will not be able to vote on that application since he was not a sitting commissioner during the public hearing. Just to give you a heads up.
Okay,
And just to spark your recall, there was a public hearing at your last meeting 2 weeks ago. It opened, you did have one member of the public speak in opposition, I'd say, to the application. You did not have much discussion of the application after the public hearing, much as if any. So if you want to have any discussion first, go for it. Otherwise, like you mentioned, there's a draft resolution to approve with a slate of conditions in my staff report to you.
well, I have a question. No surprise. In your
Mark your tally.
if I run over my quota, just let me know. I'll be happy. In your memorandum, item number 5, wetland and watercourse buffer.
Yes.
You state that the area shall not be made, the buffer area, I'm not absolutely certain exactly geographically what the buffer area covers, but one of the things that concerned me about this application was the preservation of the tree cover between the development and the river. And when we asked the powers that be about that, they said they were going to, I believe they said they were going to preserve the tree cover with the exception of 4 trees, which they had to remove, which apparently interrupt the putting in of the silt fence or something else. I don't know. It doesn't matter why they need to remove them. But I would like to see it in the resolution that they limit the number of trees they can remove to 4 and leave the rest of the growth between the development and the river as it is now. So I would say, you know, or manicured feature of the existing tree cover, not more than, of the existing tree cover, not more than 4 trees shall be removed for construction, or actually be removed. I don't need the qualification.
Be removed within the upland review area. They are removing other trees kind of up by the Richards Avenue, but you're talking about within the upland.
So the buffer area is the Richards Avenue side of the trees as they currently exist. Like where is the buffer area specifically?
Okay, I'm pulling up a map. 1 second.
Is there a tree removal plan included in the plans that they provided?
There is on the grading plan, which I'm working on pulling up. Which I really cannot see. Here we go. So this is,
Right.
there's a whole plan set, and this is the sedimentation erosion control plan. And the this dashed line is the 100-foot upland review area line
Okay.
here. The line with the X is the silt fence line. That's the silt fence that's referred to in that special condition. It says
Right.
basically no activity beyond that silt fence line or the limit of disturbance. And then these in gray are the existing trees. And then these trees here are with the gray and the horizontal hatches are trees to be removed. So I count 1, 2, 3, 4 trees that are within the upland review, between the upland review area limit and the proposed silt fence.
Okay.
Then there are other trees, just to clarify, there are other trees that are on the site that would be removed, but they are outside of the upland review area.
Right. And they're not close to, yeah.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for clearing that up. That seems to me to protect 99% of the trees that currently exist between the property and the river. So that would be fine with me.
Okay, so I'd like to make a motion to approve
Okay.
the resolution for S20-558, 125 Richards Avenue, as written, dated January 20th, 2021.
I'll second.
Can I ask a question regarding that motion?
Sure, this discussion.
Right. How typical is it for an applicant to be seeking to build within the upland review area?
Well, if the applicant were to build outside of the upland review area, typically they would not need a wetland permit. So they would go and get their zoning permit, their building permit, and go at it. So the wetland regulations are written, you regulate activities. So you don't have a cut and stone regulated area, but within your regulations, you previously determined that generally activities within 50 feet of a wetland and generally activities within 100 feet of a wetland, of a water course. And then you have some caveats for if it's on a steep slope, that those activities are more likely to potentially have impacts to wetlands and water courses and therefore require a permit. So if they were entirely outside of the upland review area, we would have a shorter night tonight.
Yeah. And if there weren't as many questions, okay. Is there any further discussion on the motion as sits on the table? Hearing none.
Well, actually, one last question. The 4 trees identified by Alexis, I don't see why they need to be removed. I mean, I'm sure the builder has their own plans, but you know, they don't seem to be impinging on the desired construction areas.
I suspect, let me scroll
I think
up.
it's because of the grading.
You're right. If you go up to the grading plan. Oops. One up top. Okay. No, it still isn't quite there. Sorry. So, yeah, I mean, one of them, 2 of them are placed where they are proposing screened porch and patios.
Okay.
So these are those 2. And then the other 2 are within some grading, certainly the northern one. And then the southern one is kind of on the limit of grading. I don't really know the shape of a lot of these trees. And I think it calls it out as an 18-inch maple. But who knows? A lot of times surveyors don't get their trees right, so it may not be the healthiest of trees.
I would just say, from having been over there, that this schematic does not begin to show as many trees as there are between the upland review area and the water. I mean, there's no straight line that you could walk that would get you down to the river. It's all trees. It's not mature growth. It's, you know, probably, I don't know, maybe 10-year-old trees that have grown up in there. But they're there, and that's the overstory. And you know, I mean, from having looked at it, losing 4 would mean that you'd be left with 500 or something like that. So, you know. Right.
And just to clarify, a survey does not show all the trees. Typically, it's only showing trees that are at least greater than 8-inch diameter.
Right. Okay.
Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, then I guess we can try just an oral vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, then the application is granted, and the resolution in the memorandum dated January 20th is approved.
Okay.
Next on the agenda, S2559, 7 Adams Lane, Tam, construction of new single-family residence. This is the property that got jammed up because of the change of rules with the Silvermine Golf Club, I believe. And Mr. Tam came up with what must have been a very painstaking effort to try to figure out how to do this without that facility. But we have a staff memorandum which contains a possible resolution.
Right. So as you recall, at the last meeting, we talked about confirming that the proposed development meets the city standards for drainage. And I don't think we're quite there. And I'll have Mr. Tam speak to this in a moment, but I believe he's confident that he'll be able to meet the drainage standards, but has not yet determined whether he will have a rain garden or underground detention system. But whatever system he has would be outside of the upland review area. He is still proposing, as I mentioned in the staff report, a overflow of his primary stormwater capture system that would overflow into kind of a swale that is planted with some native plants. And that swale would be between 30 and 40, it's 10 foot wide, so it would be 30 to 40 feet from the wetland. And so as written in the potential special conditions that are in that draft resolution, the buffer would be at the uphill edge of that planted bioswale. And so you'd have a permanent buffer 40 feet from the wetland. 30 feet of it would be generally undisturbed except for the temporary work of putting in the well. And then the 40 would kind of be your end buffer. If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'm not finding anything in the proposed resolution, the memorandum, that describes the ongoing problem with the city. Maybe Mr. Tam can just bring us up to date on that.
Okay. Am I on speaker now? I mean, you can hear what I'm
Yes,
saying?
sir. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Loud and
Okay.
clear.
Okay, so I'll try to repeat. This whole thing began about 12 years ago. I wanted to build on the property. So I talked to Clarence Joseph, the town sanitarian. We took some soil tests. He said it's because of the wetlands are so near the wetland buffer. And he said it's marginal. So he told me about the fact that the Silvermine Club had brought the town sewer up to Silvermine Clubhouse, actually on the corner of that U Street or whatever the street, I can't recall right now. U Street. And then, so he said, well, because the Silvermine had brought the sewer up, talk to them and see if I could hook up to their sewer. So then I talked to the Silvermine sewer people and the Silvermine Club. It took me a long time. We finally made an agreement. So I paid them to be able to tie into their sewer, their line that they built. Then I asked Dean Martin, government engineer, to devise a 2-inch force main from my lot underneath Adams Lane and to Sear Hill, down Sear Hill to the manhole. And that was finally approved by Dick Linnertz when he was the public works engineer. Subsequently, he retired, and the new public works engineer, I talked to her about it, and she said that they discovered that there was leaks in the city sewer from Silvermine down to the bottom of Sear Hill, that there's more water going in than it was coming out. And so she decided that nobody else could ever, that's what she said, tie into that line. And so I cannot go to the city sewer, so then I had to go back to Clarence Joseph, and he told me to get another engineer to apply to the state health department to see if we could devise a separate system. So anyway, the land tech surveyors did devise a new plan for a septic on the property that was finally approved by the state engineer. That plan encroaches about 6.5 feet into the wetland buffer. And so I'm asking for 3 types of things. First, my house, well, I had approval for the house that would encroach 10 feet on the wetland buffer, but that at that time it was to be, the sewer was to go through the city, and the stormwater was to be inserted into the ground. That approval by your commission had expired, and so now I'm requesting an approval for only 2 feet of in the buffer, so I'll be 48 feet from the wetlands instead of 40 feet. I will encroach 6.5 feet into the buffer with my septic trench, and Alexa said I will need temporarily to get in to put a well. The well would be in the buffer, 75 feet away from the sewer. The issue I think came up at the last meeting was that I would need that the rain garden design should be designed by a professional engineer. I agree it should, but I think the crux is, at what point does that come in? Because the house has to be on that specific location because of the setbacks, zoning setbacks, and because the wetland setbacks has to, and precisely that location. It can be smaller, but it cannot move somewhere else. And so I have not designed the house. What I'd like to do would be to get the approval to be able to encroach 2 feet in the buffer with my house, 6.5 feet in the buffer with a septic system, put in a well. And then I showed that there's plenty of room for the storm drainage, the roof drainage to drain on the property outside the buffer, but have an engineer, when we design the house, then figure out exactly how big that rain garden should be and what the outlet of the rain garden should be and what direction the outlet should be. And I think that can be resolved between a professional engineer and the city engineers at the same time I apply for a building permit. I don't think I hope I wouldn't have to provide all that right now because I'm not proposing to drain roof stormwater into the buffer. And so I don't think that's part of the application because I'm not affecting the buffer with my storm drain. I'm just showing that there's plenty of room on the property for the storm drainage rain garden. So that's
Okay.
my understanding of where we are now. Now,
Thank you.
if I'm wrong, correct me or. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Dan. Alexis, isn't there some outstanding, is there anything outstanding between what Mr. Dan has proposed to do and the city? Is there an additional okay or permit or something that's required that goes beyond what we're dealing with here?
Not in advance of your permit unless, as long as you're, I mean, what Mr. Tam was just concluding with was the discussion regarding the stormwater system. And I'll just share my screen again. And so again, the wetland here is at the top of the screen, and he's proposing a rain garden. And my
Right.
only comment had been that the rain garden dimensions and efficiency meet the city standards for drainage. The city did not have the same city's stormwater standards when the previous application was approved. But as
Okay.
Mr. Tam points out, this dark solid line is the upland review area. And so this
Right.
portion, which is his proposed primary rain garden, he will put something within his property that's in the upland review area, kind of in this area, that will meet the stormwater standards.
Fine.
The swale that this is actually a swale. It has grading. It's hard to see there's a lot going on, but there's an overflow and then a proposed swale that would be planted with native plants. That would be the limit of the proposed wetland buffer.
Thank you.
So I have a question.
Mitch.
Should we,
Yes.
I know that sometimes, drainage ends up underground, if the rain garden weren't approved. Do we have a stipulation that, it remain out of, that any stormwater that goes underground that has soil disturbance remain outside of that buffer, perhaps? Would that be?
So yeah, you can
or
add that
if-
as a condition. Yeah.
Or if it needs to go in the buffer for some other reason, an engineering reason, that we would need to review it, or you would need to review it, Alexis?
Right. That is, I'd say within the draft resolution, it has a variety of conditions. And one is that any change to the overall plan will require a return to the agency for review.
Okay.
And that there is a buffer, and a wetland buffer 40 for all areas within 40 feet of the wetland.
In addition to the swale.
In addition to the swale. So you can add I think with the conditions, it's fairly clear that there's
Yeah, I
having a
guess I
primary
didn't
water
read
capture
that well
the
enough,
upland regulations.
so.
Alexis,
Yeah.
may I make a comment here? Just to try to, am I, okay, just to try to explain again that my previous application that was approved showed stormwater from the roof injected into the ground on both sides of the house, and both the west side and the east side of the house. Those detention tanks were underground outside of the buffer. However, now, because on the east side of the house, my sewer, my septic leach field is there, I cannot really inject stormwater on top of the leach field. So now all the stormwater has to go on the west side of the property. But an engineer will have to design exactly how to get the water from the east side, which roof is sloping down around the house. But I don't think I have to resolve those details now. It's just, there's room on the west side, and we're not going to dump the stormwater on the east side over the septic system. We're dumping on the west side outside the buffer. And I'm just asking for that detail to be put up by the engineer and the city when I apply for the building permit. I think the specifics of that doesn't have to be resolved right now. Okay, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
I personally don't see anything that makes me nervous at all that we're going to get into trouble. And so I am willing to make a motion to approve the S20-5597 Adams Lane directive as written, dated January 20th, 2021.
I second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Discussion. I'm a little late in the day for that, but we had the discussion. I would say the motion is carried.
Great. Okay.
Thank you for your patience, Mr. Dan.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, back to the agenda. We're up to 15 Adams Lane. Is there more to that, Alexis, than what we have?
Yeah, so right now, actually, Jeff, if you're listening in, if you could promote, there's a Jim Dean in the attendees list. If you could promote him, he might want to talk. So I've been very busy. I did not get a draft resolution made for this applicant. But at the last meeting, the application was received, and I think that generally it was well received.
Yes, it was.
I will be drafting a resolution to approve it with some of the conditions that are typical for a corrective action application. So I would not recommend making a decision on the application tonight. The applicant has submitted, as discussed at the receipt, the applicant had requested that if a approval were to be made, that he requested that you considered not including or requiring the condition of a bond being posted. You don't have a draft resolution in front of you, so I guess maybe that I would kick that conversation to the next meeting, if that's all right with you. And I didn't know if, since Mr. Dean's on the line, if you had anything to add, but I think we're.
And the question is, do you see me?
No, but we can hear you.
Good. Okay. Well, Basically, we're looking to fix in spades what we took out. I don't have any, I've listened to water courses and different things that you've gone through here. So I just need to get the property in good shape.
We can't hear.
Go ahead, Alexis. The planting of 60.
Still can't hear you. Sorry.
Trees and, yeah. And so I need your approval to implement that plan, and then I will come the early spring, put that into the works.
Okay, I think, Mr. Dean, I think that what we have, we recall your presentation earlier, and I think we are inclined to be supportive of what it is that you want to do in this corrective action. So I don't think you need to, I guess, inform us of anything additional to what you already have. It's likely that we will have a resolution before us at our next meeting, and you can look forward to getting a square answer from us at that time.
Sounds good. Thank you very much for your time and attention to this.
You're welcome.
Chairman, I have a question about this application and to remediate these violations. Is there a time where the commission may discuss this application again in the future?
Yes.
Okay. That's my
Yeah,
question.
so certainly before the next, I mean, you can discuss anything tonight, and then at the next meeting, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
John, we would have a specific resolution to refer to or add to at our next meeting, and we would have, there's no resolution been made tonight or any definitive statement made, other than we would move it forward with the thought that we can resolve it next time. That's all.
Understood.
Right.
Thank
And
you.
even if there is a draft resolution, that doesn't mean that you have to make a resolution that night. And you can certainly, and are encouraged to discuss it prior to making a decision.
That's right. Okay. Then can we move to item S2561, 10 Range Road, estate of Dorothy Newman. That seemed to me last week to be a reasonable formality, but because it had been before us in earlier days, but now it is it's back. It's I don't think terribly complex. Alexis, do you want to tee it up a little bit?
No, I think all of you kind of have a pretty good memory, maybe, of
Okay.
your last meeting 2 weeks ago. And you're right, it is a subdivision application. The applicant has a lot that needs to go through the subdivision process before making it into 2 lots. He had previously, under the apparently erroneous conclusion that it was eligible for a free cut and was already a second lot. You had previously approved site development plans in 2016 that show the full development of both of the 2 lots that are proposed tonight. So pretty straightforward. In your packet, you should have received a staff report with a draft resolution that has kind of some of the very basic conditions of a subdivision. And that is that any physical activity within the upland review area will require a second or a site development application, or in this case, permit to be approved. And that's about it.
Okay, hearing that, and to give Liz a chance to get back to surfing, which she looks like she's anxious to do, I move that the application S2561 10 Range Road be granted as stipulated and described in staff's memo of January 20th. Any second
I second it.
discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's granted, Liz. Hang 10.
Thank you very much. Everyone have a very pleasant evening. Appreciate your help.
Sure.
Night.
Good night.
Thanks. Good night to you and your team.
Okay, S2562, 761 Main Avenue, construction of a new multifamily residence with associated on-site septic system, stormwater management and landscaping adjacent to a wetland and water course. We don't
So
have,
this-
the only thing we have on this is what was in the minutes from last week, last meeting, as far as I can tell.
So this application was received at your last meeting. And upon its submittal, staff had done a preliminary review letter, which was referenced at the last meeting and you had received previously. You should have received an email, like an hour and 15 minutes ago, where I forwarded the, excuse me, the reply from the applicant regarding the comments of the preliminary review letter. So just to summarize, they're working on it. And they will be submitting some revised plans that it sounds like addresses a lot of the comments in that preliminary review letter.
So we can table this without a motion until the next meeting when we have more details to consider.
Yeah, and the applicant is here tonight. I don't know if you'd like to give them a floor just to kind of describe where they are, and in their response, they indicate that they will be revising plans. Maybe we could get a better idea of.
By all
when that might
means,
happen.
the
All right.
the commission welcomes the applicant. Please let us know what you have to contribute.
Yeah, Lynn, you just need to unmute yourself.
Alexis, would it be possible for us to share our screen briefly?
Yes, who would be sharing? We'll just have our tech. Let me know who needs to share.
It would be Lauren Calabria.
Oh, it'd be you. Okay. That's
Yes,
easy
me.
enough.
Sorry, I didn't mean to make that so confusing.
That's quite all right. So Jeff, if you're listening and if you could let Lauren share her screen.
Lauren should be able to share already.
Okay.
Try it now.
So if those who wish to speak would please identify themselves for the record.
Yeah, I think
can-
they're working on it.
Oh, okay.
I am here. I'm David Hughes, Mr. Chairman. Professional engineer, registered land surveyor.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes.
I'm not sure if sorry, my name is Lauren Calabria. I am with the applicant, iPark Norwalk 2 LLC, the owner of the property located at 761 Main Avenue. Also with us tonight is Lynn Ward, who's one of the principals, and we have David Hughes, as he just introduced himself, and also part of the team is Steve Pistola of Pistola and Associates. So we just thought we would, I know last meeting we briefly described the project. It is a multifamily building, 3 stories over 1 level of parking. It would be constructed over what is existing parking lot within the iPark complex. And it would be a 132 unit multifamily building made comprised of studio and 1 bedroom units. They're micro units. And we just thought for a little bit of a difference than what you normally get to see, we'd show you another one that we built in Yonkers. So this is another iPark building. And like I said, they're all micro units, so one bedroom studio units, just to give you a little something different. And separately, we also have just a brief architectural video of the project, which if you'll just indulge us for a moment, we'll show you just to give you something a little bit different. So hopefully this works. So you could see where the proposed building is located, and in proximity to the LA Fitness there. Again, this is just to give you guys a little bit of a different view than you're normally used to of the project.
Is this is this the Yonkers thing, or is this the one you're proposing for Norwalk?
This is the one we're proposing for Norwalk.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
It doesn't have sound. We apologize.
It's all right.
So
We thought tonight we would briefly respond to, I don't know if you can hear me now.
Very well.
Thought we would briefly respond to update you to some of the discussions we've had with staff and hopefully collect all of your questions, put the questions and the landscape plan all together for our next meeting. So what we would like to do now is hand over to one of our engineers, David Hughes, who's here with Steve Pistola, and just bring you up to speed on the discussions we have had with the staff. We're going to put up our site plan and David can address that.
Let me just interject for a second. Is Mr. Hughes, what you're about to share with us, is that the same material that was sent to staff earlier today that we got an hour ago or thereabouts?
Well, I was planning on doing a quick presentation because we didn't get a chance at the last meeting to show what the site plan looks like. And then we can talk questions and answers. And I think most of the stuff that is on the response will be discussed during the presentation. I'll be happy to go through my letter if you want, line by line. We can do that if you'd like as well.
No, I'm perfect. We'll be, I think that what we're going to need to do, I'm happy to listen to whatever it is that you care to put before us. But we're going to need some fairly substantial material for us individually and collectively to review before we get to a point of looking at determining what the outcome will be. So it won't be sufficient to just do a visual presentation. We're going to need to have the same sorts of schematics and that we receive for any other kind of application. That having been said, please go ahead.
So I have a site plan here. Can someone share the screen for me? Is that possible?
Sure.
Can
Or
everyone
no,
see
someone's got
that?
it.
Can everyone see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So I'm assuming everyone knows where the parcel is at 761 Main Avenue. The existing.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's
but
okay.
That's a very important point. This is the iPark across from the Walmart and the Staples. And it is home, as you know, to many medical offices of Norwalk Hospital, LA Fitness, and to several corporate occupants. It's very important that people know because this is a mixed-use development, and several of the things that we're doing here are in relationship to completing this mixed use. We're putting in this, which is basically workforce housing, because many of the people who work there are probably going to become the residents. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. So if you can just follow along with the hand here, there's a bridge here that comes off of Main Avenue. And we have access to the site. This building here is the LA Fitness building. There's another building that's covered by these charts here, which is corporate buildings, corporate offices. And basically the existing conditions are such. We have the Norwalk River here on the bottom. We have a wetland line that is shown by this hatch pattern here, which is pretty much mid slope on the between the river and the edge of pavement. So we have an existing edge of pavement right here, which is an existing access driveway for the parking lot. We also have a 100-foot setback from the wetlands, which is this dashed line. You can see it here coming up through here. And we also have the 100-foot setback from the water, which is here. It's a little bit darker. And also the floodway, which is the FEMA floodway. That is shown in this long dash, short dash here. So currently, there is an existing parking lot in this whole general area here that I'm outlining. And a portion of it is in the floodway currently. And the rest of the property, even the portion that's in Wilton, is in the FEMA floodplain. Okay. So
Mr. Hughes, a question, Mr. Hughes. This is a schematic of what you intend to do, is it not?
This is the layout plan, right?
Right. You don't intend to make changes to the footprint or to the tarmac at all?
Changes to, when you say tarmac, you mean the pavement?
Correct.
Yes. We are going to repave the existing parking area, reconfigure it with a new layout so that we can obviously gain some more parking spaces in some areas. And we're also creating larger green spaces. So we have some larger landscape islands, and we also have a landscape island here and here and here. And those are not existing at this particular point in time. So we're creating more green space than there is right now in the existing parking lot.
But specifically, you may well be moving the tarmac of the parking lot closer to the river. Is that correct?
That is not correct.
It's not correct.
That is not correct. We are going to repave in the same location with the same grades.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
So
I have a question as well. What is the outline of the building? Can you show me that on this plan?
There. It's basically this dark, small dash line here. So if you look, this would be the second floor outline of the building right here.
So one of the islands appears to go underneath the building. Is that a planting island that's going under the building?
Actually, two of them go under the building, yes. Yes. And we would like to have some plantings in the island. We're working on that with the landscape architect right now.
Okay, I think it's going to be difficult to grow plants under there.
Maybe. Let's see what we can do.
You do understand that the building is up on stilts if it...
That's right. Well, I didn't get that far yet.
Go ahead, Mr. Hughes.
So basically, we have a parking lot right now which services the other buildings. It is primarily, I would say it's empty quite a bit. Also, one of the most important things is that, and it's not on this drawing here, but there is a main trunk line, drainage line that comes through this existing parking lot. It's about a 36-inch pipe. There are some catch basins collecting stormwater, and it discharges right about here into the Norwalk River. Okay. So I think when we look at our proposal, we have obviously a 51,000 square foot building. So if you're looking at this from the site plan or a bird's eye view, this dark outer limit is the second floor. So basically this building will be built on piers. It's going to be a 4-story building. And we're going to have the 2nd through 4th floors are going to be residential units. The only portion that will be the ground floor will be this area that's hatched into gray. Okay. Now that will be a lobby. It will also be for mechanicals, stairwells, and elevators. Okay, so I think it's important for me to note that we are not disturbing any wetlands. We are doing some disturbance within the 100-foot upland review area. However, the disturbance that we are creating is, again, the reconfiguration and the repaving and the landscaping. So technically that area has already been disturbed once. So if you're looking at the total area that we're disturbing, if you're looking at anything new that we're disturbing, we're only really disturbing about 2,200 square feet in this general area here in the upland review area. Everything else is outside of the upland review area. So couple of important goals when we were looking at designing the building and also stormwater management. So FEMA has best management practices when constructing in a floodplain. So one of the most important best management practices is to maintain a first floor, a minimum of 1 foot above the base flood elevation, and we've done that. The second is to leave parking and driveways, existing parking and driveways to the same grade that they are currently. And that is what we're doing right now. The other thing is elevating the structure on piers. So we are elevating this structure on piers. Everything outside of the dark gray is going to be on a pier. So we'll have a parking lot underneath the building. I apologize for not mentioning that. And again, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floors will be residential units. The last item is compensating for filling in the wetland, in the floodplain. So in this gray area, we are proposing to fill, I believe, let me make sure I get it right, 846 cubic yards. So we are compensating that fill with excavation. We have excavation up on this area here. We're proposing a retaining wall and excavating here. We have some minor excavation in the parking lot here and another mitigation area over in this area on the other side of the parking lot. And that compensation is going to be over 3 times the amount that we have filled. So we're looking at 2,472 cubic yards. All right. So again, that's a BMP, a best management practice from FEMA. When we're doing any kind of filling in the floodplain, we can create a situation where we're excavating and compensating. And we have a factor of safety of 3 to 1. The other main goal for the design of this site plan was stormwater treatment. Right now, we don't have any treatment. So one of the things that we've come up with in these long landscape islands is a biofiltration system, which removes more than 80% of total suspended solids, hydrocarbons, phosphorus, nitrogen. Also, the other reason for having the biofiltration trenches under the building is that we have to coordinate roof drains under the building getting into those trenches as well. So that is primary treatment for any runoff coming off the parking lot. Secondary treatment would include two two hydrodynamic separators. One would be up in this area in the existing collection system, and the second would be down in here prior to tying back into that 36-inch RCP and then discharging into the river. One more note on the stormwater. We do have a large amount of water that comes off of, if anyone knows this site at all, this is where the railroad is, and it's elevated. And on the other side of the railroad, there is a large hill, and there's a lot of water that comes down off of that and gets collected and comes into our system. So periodically we have problems with flooding, and we've solved that problem due to the fact we're going to put a retaining wall here. We're now going to catch the water and collect it on the backside and then tie it back in to allow it to drain, we put a flared end over here and we want to discharge by sheet flow to the river rather than tie into the system because the system can't handle it. When we analyzed our 36-inch pipe, the water that comes from the north side of the property, plus what's in this parking lot now, can be handled by the 36-inch pipe. However, the stuff that's coming off of the site is too much for the capacity. So we've made a modification to that. I think in terms of statistics, the only other thing that I want to, mention is that the area of disturbance, and a lot of that is reconfiguring the parking lot and repaving and restriping, is basically going to follow my cursor and is about 3.6 acres. So,
Okay, Mr.
if
Hughes,
anyone has
that's,
any questions?
well, I would just like to say that I think you've given us a good overview of what it is that you propose. But as I said before, I think the commissioners individually and collectively will need to see this in some kind of printout or ink on paper form so that we can consider it and have appropriate comments for the next meeting or the next time you're before us. You understand that? I mean, you've talked about, and I'm not looking for answers today. I'm just giving you an example of the kind of thing that's likely to come up. You mentioned flooding. I think we'd be interested to know how much flooding you've currently had. If it's coming down over the railroad, the retention, the grassy strips seem to be facing the wrong way to catch floodwater coming down from the top to the bottom. You haven't addressed runoff from the roof or anything else about the roof. We are a conservation commission as well as an inland wetlands agency, and we would be interested to know whether you have any plans to put grassy areas on the roof or something else that would lend a little bit of support to conservation of what wildlife remains in that area. I'm not looking for answers now, but those are the kinds of things that we're going to want to know in the future when we have something in writing to respond to.
We do have plans for that. We have a roof garden, and these plans are prepared. The landscaping plan is in the state of completion and will be before you. And we basically thank you for taking a first overlook at this.
Fine, great. Anybody got any questions? Any commissioners? No? Then we
I have a quick question. I do have a quick question.
Yes.
Attorney Ward, I believe last time you spoke to the commission, you indicated that this property is in both Norwalk and Wilton. Is that correct? Or I think it's entirely within Norwalk. Or is there a city border or a town border somewhere in here that we are not seeing?
Not in what is before you for consideration, but it is a large property running along Route 7, and the northern end of it is within Wilton.
So,
David, could you stop sharing your screen and
Sure.
I will share an aerial photo.
okay.
Texas.
What
So-
portion of the constructed building will be on the Wilton side of the line?
None of the constructed building.
No portion of the constructed building will be in Wilton.
No.
Okay.
Any other questions for the group?
So just to clarify, this outlined roughly in blue is the entire property. This map does not have the property line, but it is kind of along this line where my cursor is going. Something like that.
That's pretty good.
Okay,
And so the proposed construction is in this portion of the parking lot. This is the gym that
Yep.
was referred to earlier. This is the entrance is in Norwalk. There is another entrance into the site from Kent Road in Wilton. On the tax records, if you look up the tax records in Norwalk, it just references the Norwalk portion on the Norwalk tax rolls. And if you were to go to Wilton to look at the tax assessors or the GIS data, it would just be for this area. So that might have been part of the confusion there.
Understood.
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would just, obviously I know that the iPark team has been listening to the commission tonight, discuss all of the other pending applications. And though none of the commissioners have brought this up, they are often looking for an enhancement of the remaining buffer between the water resources that they are tasked with preserving. And so in this case, it's the river and those adjacent riparian wetlands. And so I know that you are proposing to redo the parking lot, and I would encourage you a increase of distance between the parking lot and the water course or wetland.
We will do that.
Okay,
So I just want to put that out there because often the commissioners don't say that until later when you've put in even more work. So
Now's a good time to look at it.
okay, we thank you kindly, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Um,
everyone.
Thank you.
Good night.
good night.
Good night. Moving along, we are at Roman numeral 5, approval of minutes. The minutes are extensive. Does anybody have any comment about the minutes? I would, Alexis, just point out that on the second page, I don't know, somehow we jumped from 3B to 7, adoption of 21-21 meeting calendar, and then later we're up to 10, adoption of 21-21.
Oh, adoption. Oh, I got it second. Yeah, I'll fix that. And
So,
it does.
okay.
So I never know when you amend the agenda. I try to keep the number that's on the agenda,
Oh, I know,
which
okay,
is
fine,
confusing when you read the minutes, but
gotcha, okay.
but you did only discuss adoption of the calendar once, so I'll fix that.
And I would,
I see what I did.
on page 4, don't let me get ahead of you.
Yes.
It says here, Ms. Ward noted the units are affordable housing in the practical sense of the word. I would suggest deleting that because affordable housing doesn't have a practical sense. It is what it is. And maybe we could just say that she noted the units she thought might rent out in the 2,000 to 3,000 range. That would be perfectly acceptable to anybody that's looking.
Sounds good. So I'll just delete that first part of the sentence.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's dangerous to get into putting in the record things that are specific to real estate because all kinds
I
of
agree.
people get upset. Okay. And now, and on, I don't even know if this is appropriate, but on page 5, in the discussion of 7 Adams Lane, Mr. Tam, you say that You recommend there is confirmation the proposal meets the city's standards for drainage prior to a decision. Is that because at that time we did not have approval?
Yeah, and they still haven't approved anything, just to clarify. So correct. At
But
the
we-
last meeting,
We
I
approved that.
I recommended confirmation that it meet the city standards. And then in the interim, he did meet with the city engineers. And through their discussion, as I stated earlier, I'm confident that he can come up with some kind of plan to meet the city standards and stay outside of the upland review area.
Right, so we have a good resolution, and when he goes to get his permit, that will all be taken care of. Anybody else have any comments on the minutes? Anybody have a motion?
I move to approve I move to approve as suggested by your amendments.
Do I hear a second? All right, I'll second the approval of the minutes. In favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, the minutes are,
And one abstention.
Yes,
As-
thank you. If you can hear me.
oh, yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, a quiet abstention from Matt, okay. Okay, next is public comments. Do we have anyone on the list here that wants to speak?
We have one who has raised her hand. So Jeff, if you could allow Miss Laura Cella, who's in the attendees, to speak.
Sure.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, that's what everyone asks now before they speak in this day of electronics. For the record, I'm Diane Lauricella, and I am at 21 Blue Mountain Ridge Road in Norwalk. I wanted to just briefly speak in support of, as was mentioned by Mr. Levin, but I was planning to come and speak about examining the role at the beginning of this year, especially in light of what we're expecting and hoping for out of Washington, a more environmentally and climate change oriented administration, that this commission examine ways that it might be able to expand its role beyond an inland wetlands agency. And I thought, because Rome isn't built in a day, that you could begin by scheduling possibly quarterly listening sessions that are dedicated, at least part of your meeting, or a meeting just dedicated to a listening session, where we invite in the public, but also environmental groups and others that care about environmental topics. And there are a lot of wonderful environmental groups in our city. To give you just briefly the history, last meeting, you had mentioned something about, I think Alexis said she wasn't sure when this public comment section was added. It was added prior to her coming, I believe, when I was the chair of the environmental committee of the League of Women Voters. At that time, the League of Women Voters handled issues. Now they just handle voting rights and that sort of thing. But back in the day, in the 90s and all, we had a committee, and we actually presented several scenarios for then the commission. And when Alex Knopp came in, we actually did a survey and a study that I would like to present to the commission and Alexis in the near future, even taking a look at the possibility of separating the Inland Wetlands Commission from a conservation commission, like many towns have done. There have been white papers on it. It might be a way for you to get around to taking a look at traditional conservation issues that I know many of you would like to. But I think that of course, your inland wetlands work is very legally oriented, time sensitive, and very important as well. So I just wanted to say hello. I wanted to tell you I have a packet ready to go. I would love very much for you to consider a listening session to start. And I think that would be a way to take a look and examine how this commission can expand its role or help birth a truly conservation commission for the future. Thank you.
Are there any other comments on our list?
Hello?
I think Diane was the only one.
Okay,
Hello?
then we can go along to item 7, which is comments of
Hey,
staff.
can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Oh,
Okay.
is
I'm
Diane still?
I believe that Mr. Keegan, and I thank him for reading my memo or my request. And I do not know if it was voted on already. I was on another call at the same time. But the main reason I wanted to just mention clarifying that is because I feel that our solid waste program and reducing costs for the city is very important, since it is
Wait,
part of.
Are we
Diane,
listening to another conversation?
I
part
think
of
she's
the
at the
agenda.
council meeting.
Okay.
Diane?
I just wanted to say that there are ways
Diane?
to reduce.
I know.
I've muted her. You can go ahead.
Okay.
Right.
I think she
Can
thinks
we
she's doing.
disconnect?
She's multitasking.
Yeah, I mean, I'll,
I can remove
I
her.
don't know. Let me just.
Very quickly, are there any comments of staff at the moment?
I have one small comment. I'm wondering if on our names on our Zoom, we want to write commissioner. I was on a ZBA meeting the other night and I had no idea who the different ZBA commissioners were. And I think that might help people know,
who is
saying. Just a suggestion, if people are totally against it, that's fine. But I was just thinking it might help with clarity because, we're not all sitting at a table like we used to.
Good idea.
Yeah. So maybe, so commissioner and last name, is that good with everyone?
Sure.
That works.
Okay.
Okay, now comments of commissioners, no offense,
Wait,
but.
hey, whoa.
Oh, I thought you looked, okay.
You've got an agenda.
Okay, I know, but all right, so comments of staff.
Okay, but I think Mr. Levin was trying to talk to about the name thing. Maybe.
Yeah, again, this is out of ignorance. Is there an occasion that the commission meets in private or in executive session when we are able to talk amongst ourselves without the conversation being part of public record?
Oh, no, did you not get my, I think I emailed you back.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see it.
Let me just double check. But I'll recap my email and I'll look to make sure. I sent so many. So the quick answer is no. Because you're a public entity. Oh, here we go. I'll read my email. The Conservation Commission, as a public agency, typically always meets only in an open public meeting. Executive session is reserved only for certain limited matters, for example, to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation or sale of a property, like if the commission were in negotiations to buy an open space parcel. So there are very specific rules that are in the state statutes for meeting in private. And so to go into executive session, it has to be to discuss one of these particular items, and it has to be on the agenda. You have to say on the agenda the reason why you're going into executive session. A majority of the commissioners have to vote to go into to executive session. So it's kind of a high bar to remove your publicness and go into a private meeting. But I did send you an email. So if you don't find it, let me know and I'll resend it.
But going a step further, there's many times when you will be asked individually for some comment or some kind of reflection on something that is before the commission. And unless you want to see yourself quoted in some online forum, the best thing to do is to smile and say, thank you very much, but that's something that I only discuss with my colleagues in session, and leave it there. And it's disrespectful for anybody to push you. Um, It's amazing, especially when we had in-person meetings, you'd walk out the door and there'd be all kinds of people. And another thing, and you just have to really just walk through them, you know, I mean, it's the way it comes.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
you always want to be aware of ex parte communication, which is communication regarding any pending application outside of kind of this public meeting. And then, right, so any discussion of any pending matters, it's pretty much all public. And so, and it's not easy because it's a lot more difficult to kind of talk about problems or what, whatever, or if an application is disliked, it's a lot harder to have that conversation when the applicant is sitting there. I understand that, but
But you get
So-
used to it.
Okay, I understand. Okay, so that's all very clear. Executive session is possible, but the hurdle is high. I do have comments and observations on an existing application, which is 15 Adams Lane.
so hold on. So since so on the agenda, you have kind of that kind of the agenda is there so the public can kind of gauge when you're going to be talking about a pending application or not. So you sent me some very nice photographs of 15 Adams Lane, and I will send those photographs to the other commissioners. Commissioner Levin did a staff, a site walk. I'm fading fast, and took some photos. And so I'll send those around and that will, I think, help discussion at the next meeting. But you can't really talk about a specific application out of order of the agenda. And that's just, like a fundamental fairness kind of thing.
Understood.
But I encourage you to talk about it at the next meeting prior to any vote.
Shall be done.
Excellent. Just very quick staff updates, and I'll try to be quick because I'm tired. For staffing, you all know, or I think most of you know, that the Conservation Office had a environmental compliance officer, was her title, Brenda. She retired. She's the one that did all of the inspections and well, most of the inspections and a lot of the day-to-day work. We have minor permits that are staff issued that don't come before you. She did all those, all the sign-offs of all the things that are outside of the upland review area that don't need a wetland permit. There's a constant trickle of those. She did all those. And without her, I've been doing those. So I'm really, really too busy. But today, a existing planning and zoning staffer was promoted and stepped up into that role. We don't have a replacement for what she was doing. Basically, the entire planning and zoning department, which conservation is now part of, we're down 4 people. So that's kind of a lot. So that we have, I technically now have a new compliance person. I'm not going to have a new compliance person for a few months. I'm going to have her start to read the regulations and get caught up. But realistically, the amount of work that she has to do in her old position, for which there is no replacement yet, is significant. So I just wanted to let you know that. But she is intelligent and definitely qualified, and I'm excited to have her on board, soon. So things will get a lot better in the spring. And then I just wanted to, I think a couple commissioners had brought some things up, and I just wanted to talk about those. One was the Commissioner Levin, you had talked about having some kind of public forum or meeting. And this week is terrible for me, but next week I'm in the office a lot. And maybe if you want to give a call, we can maybe brainstorm and start to think about either some future dates or something to kind of get momentum on that. that would be great, just to kind of get your ideas and,
So actually, in response to that, I had started to draft a plan of goals that we might seek to accomplish by having such an open annual meeting or public forum. And I was hoping that might be a starting point.
okay, perfect.
And if I can send that to you, just to you, Alexis, or I can send it to every commission member, whatever, I'll do whatever I'm instructed to do.
Yeah, you could, for that, you could do it either way.
Okay.
So I just wanted to get that rolling because it takes, meeting twice a week. It takes a while, and there's a lot of other things going on. There's talk of a tree summit and other opportunities for kind of reaching out to the public that we might want to piggyback on if the timing works out. So
Good idea.
and then someone had asked about fines. Can't remember who that was. Sorry, it was someone brilliant.
I'd asked about permit fees.
Oh, permit fees.
I guess fines fall into that as well.
I did ask you about penalties.
Okay, fines and penalties, right. And we don't have fines and penalties. We'd have to amend the regulations. So it requires that the Common Council adopt a citation and fine ordinance where someone would basically, in addition to what you do, they'd get like a ticket that would potentially have a fine. Zoning does that and blight does that with kind of limited result. It kind of, you have to have a hearing officer to hear it. It's a lot. And so I would recommend for now kind of staying the way that you've been doing it. And I think that's right. It's all coming back to me now. I think I did great. You an email about that one too, about the corrective action application fees.
I think it also might be a good way to get somebody in the wrong frame of mind when they bring an application to us.
True.
As in like, look, I already have to pay all these application fees, blah, 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 and you guys find me like, I don't know.
Right.
Depends on the violation.
Yeah. Guess so.
Yeah, it definitely is helpful for repeat violations. And I'd say that the biggest positive of it would be it opens up what am I trying to say? So the way that you rectify violations now is that you send notice to the property owner. And at the end of the day, the property owner is responsible for their property. Even if they didn't do the damage, say that they hired a contractor who just went nuts. I can address the notice to the neighbor that did the work on the other neighbor's property, or I can send the notice to the contractor who did all the tree work. But at the end of the day, it's the property owner whose property the activity happened on that bears their responsibility. And what a citation and fine is good at is if there is a repeat, a contractor with a lot of violations who continues to kind of go around. I know when I was at the town of Wilton, in their wetland office, we adopted a citation and fine process, and we had a particular tree cutting excavation company that's based in Norwalk. I won't name, but basically it was named after this company, because this particular company was perpetually being the source of wetland violations and would be hired by residents and would tell them they don't need a permit, and then would destroy wetlands.
So you're able to find the contractor and not the property owners?
Through the citation and fine, yeah. So technically the wetland, if you read the wetland regulations, it is based again on the activities and regulated activities, and anyone doing a regulated activity can be subject to a notice violation. So yes, I can send it to anyone. At the end of the day, we don't really have a good remedy to hold a non-property owner accountable.
This kind of thing takes time. And
Hmm.
when you've got that kind of situation, you need to be able to measure outcomes. You've got to have a baseline and say, since we did this, X, Y, or Z has happened, which is good. And if we are in a position to do that and prove that, then we can move forward. If it's just because we think we ought to, then we're just marring ourselves. And we just need to be a little bit, you got to be able to measure results. That's all. You got to be able to be sure what you're doing works. That's it.
That's it for me.
Anybody else?
I move to adjourn.
I second it. All in favor,
Okay.
say good
Aye.
night.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Night, everybody.
Take
See
care.
y'all.
Good night.
Thanks, Jeff.